You were born into a world that convinced you survival meant being loved. They told you to smile when you felt nothing, to say yes when your body screamed no, to shrink yourself into shapes that made others comfortable. And somewhere in that long training, in those endless performances of agreeability, you learned to betray the one animal you were supposed to protect, yourself. This is not about manners or morality. This is about something older, deeper, and infinitely more cruel. This is about how your biology set a trap, and your consciousness walked right into it. Let me take you back 400 million years, to when your ancestors were nothing more than vertebrates swimming in ancient seas. Even then, before language, before thought, before the invention of guilt, your nervous system was learning a fundamental rule: belonging equals survival. The fish that swam alone died. The creature that failed to read the social signals of its group became prey. And so natural selection did what it always does. It carved into your flesh a need so visceral, so overwhelming, that it would one day feel more real than hunger itself. The need to be accepted. The fear of rejection became your deepest instinct, written not in your thoughts, but in the architecture of your brain, in the very chemicals that flood your system when you imagine disapproval. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system inherited from reptiles, fires the same way when you face social exclusion as it does when you face death. Because for most of your evolutionary history, they were the same thing. Now leap forward to the mammalian revolution, to the emergence of creatures who did not merely survive together but felt together. Your ancestors developed something unprecedented: a social brain. Mirror neurons that let you feel what others feel. An anterior cingulate cortex that processes social pain as physical pain. Oxytocin pathways that reward you for connection and punish you for isolation. You became a biological machine designed to attune yourself to the emotional states of those around you. This was brilliant. This kept you alive. A human baby is born more helpless than almost any other mammal, utterly dependent on the goodwill of adults for years. And so evolution made you exquisitely sensitive to their moods, their needs, their unspoken demands. You learned to read faces before you could read words. You learned to please before you learned to speak. This is not weakness. This is the masterpiece of mammalian evolution. But here is where the tragedy begins. You were designed for small tribes of 30 to 150 individuals. You were built to navigate the social dynamics of people you would know your entire life, where reputation mattered because you would see the same faces at every meal, every hunt, every gathering. Your pleasing behavior had boundaries. It had context. It had an endpoint. But then something happened that your biology could never have predicted. Civilization exploded. Cities rose. Strangers became your daily reality. And then came the final blow, the digital age, where you are now exposed to thousands of faces, thousands of opinions, thousands of potential rejections every single day. Your Stone Age brain, still wired for tribal approval, now tries to please an infinite crowd. And it is killing you. Do you ever feel like you are performing a version of yourself that no longer belongs to you? Like you have become a collection of acceptable responses, rehearsed smiles, strategic silences? Right. I have felt it too, if you understand. Because this is the core of your suffering. You are running software designed for one world while living in another. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, every time you contort yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you are not being kind. You are activating an ancient survival program that no longer serves you. Your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone that was meant to save you from predators, but now slowly destroys you from within. Your immune system weakens. Your sleep fractures. Your sense of self erodes. And the cruelest part? The more you please others, the less they respect you. Because deep in their own mammalian brains, they recognize the scent of self-betrayal. They sense that you do not value yourself. And so they mirror that valuation back to you. The philosophers saw this coming. Nietzsche called it slave morality, the poison of self-denial dressed up as virtue. He watched people sacrifice their vitality on the altar of others' comfort and called it what it was, a disease of the spirit. Kierkegaard spoke of the despair of not willing to be oneself, of losing your existence in the crowd. But they were describing something even deeper than philosophy. They were describing a biological malfunction, an evolutionary adaptation pushed beyond its breaking point. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of your conscious self, is constantly overruled by your limbic system, that ancient emotional brain that still believes rejection equals death. You know intellectually that saying no will not kill you, but your body does not believe it. Your body floods with panic at the mere thought of disapproval. And so you comply, you shrink, you disappear. Here is the revelation that changes everything, the dark, beautiful truth that no one wants to tell you. You were never meant to please everyone. That goal is not just impossible, it is biologically incoherent. Because pleasing is a zero-sum game in a world of competing needs. When you try to make everyone comfortable, you guarantee your own discomfort. When you prioritize every voice but your own, you become a hollow echo chamber of other people's desires. And nature, in all its brutal wisdom, has a way of punishing animals that abandon self-preservation. Depression is not a chemical imbalance. It is your body's way of saying you have been living against yourself for too long. Anxiety is not a disorder. It is the alarm bell of a self under siege. Your suffering is not a flaw. It is information. It is your biology screaming that the life you are performing is not the life you were meant to live. But here is where it gets even darker. Even when you realize this, even when you see the trap clearly, escape is almost impossible. Because the fear is not in your mind. It is in your bones. It is in the neural pathways carved by 10,000 acts of self-abandonment. It is in the chemical signatures of every time you chose safety over truth. Neuroplasticity means your brain has literally rewired itself around pleasing. You have trained yourself into captivity. And breaking those chains requires something most people will never attempt. The willingness to be hated. The courage to disappoint. The strength to let others feel uncomfortable with your boundaries while you resist the biological storm that begs you to take it back, to smooth it over, to make it okay. This is where the poetry lives, in the space between who you were built to be and who you have become. You are a creature of deep time, carrying the wisdom of millions of years of survival, suddenly thrust into a world that demands you ignore all of it. You are the animal who became conscious enough to betray itself, and that consciousness, that terrible gift of self-awareness, is both the source of your suffering and the only path through it. Because once you see the pattern, once you understand that your need to please is not a moral virtue, but an evolutionary relic, you have a choice. You can continue to feed the ancient fear, or you can start it, slowly, painfully, repeatedly. You can choose yourself, not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet refusals. In the no that sits heavy in your throat, in the truth that risks rejection, in the boundary that feels like violence, but is actually love. The irony is almost unbearable. The very thing that kept your ancestors alive is now the thing that is killing you. The sensitivity that made you human is the sensitivity that is breaking you. And there is no going back. You cannot unevolve your social brain. You cannot delete the mammalian need for belonging. But you can stop mistaking survival instincts for truth. You can recognize the fear for what it is, an ancient program running in a modern world, trying to protect you from dangers that no longer exist. And in that recognition, in that tiny gap between stimulus and response, you can begin to reclaim yourself. This is not a happy ending. There is no switch to flip, no epiphany that erases the wiring. You will always feel the pull toward approval. You will always hear the voice that tells you to shrink, but you can learn to hear it without obeying it. You can feel the fear and speak your truth anyway. You can carry the weight of others' disappointment without collapsing under it, not because you are strong, but because you finally understand that their comfort is not more important than your existence. That pleasing everyone is not kindness. It is self-erasure. And you were not given consciousness, this rare and terrible gift, only to spend it performing a life that belongs to everyone but you. If you see beauty in the darkness of existence, if you recognize yourself in these words, then you belong here. This channel is for those who are willing to look at the uncomfortable truths, who understand that biology is not destiny, but it is the canvas on which we paint our choices. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the shadows where science and philosophy meet, where the poetry of our suffering reveals the path to something real. You are not alone in this. You never were.